What's going on, you guys? You're tuned into the Cutting Room Knife Review. I'm your host, Garrett, and today we're taking a look at the Vosteed Raccoon. This is another entry in our Budget Bangers series. Budget Bangers, in case you haven't watched the other series of knife reviews, is a series that I'm looking at sub $100 knives that are just great deals for your money. Knives don't have to be expensive to be useful. And there's so many knives on the market right now that are very inexpensive and give you the qualities and features that cost hundreds of dollars more just a few years ago. Now, Vosteed is one of these companies that's came out with all these knives at a price range that is quite low, with a ton of just kind of stepped up features to the knives. The top liner lock, the different color PVD blades, the different material handles, always giving a deep carry pocket clip. They've kind of taken the ball that Civi started with and just kind of ran with it. They've kind of, in my opinion, taken over the lead from Civi as far as the best budget knives. What's up, guys? I'm Garrett. You're tuned in to the Cutting Room Knife Review, where I review knives, blades, and all things sharp. Please like and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more killer knife content. And when I first was taking a look at pocket knives, I got past the budget knife category pretty fast. I was a little bit later in my life getting into pocket knives, and I had enough money that I kind of just jumped right into Spyderco. And I never really took a look at Civi, Vosteed, Kaiser, a lot of brands that are putting out really good knives. I just, kind of just glossed over and said, well, I'm a Spyderco guy, and Spyderco was all that I was looking at as far as what to collect. In fact, when I first started collecting knives, all I collected was Spyderco. And I think that's the case for a number of people. You'll get into one brand of knife and you'll just jump into every model of that brand. But if you really want to break down a good value for your knife, and a value that has, you're looking at good features of the knife, not just cool looks, not just maybe the kind of steel that you have, but an all-around, well put together knife, Vosteed's right on like the tip top of the heap of a ton of different knife makers. There's so many knife makers out there making sub $100 knives, and a lot of them are just absolute crap, to be honest with you. But Vosteed makes a remarkable product, and I was completely unaware of this. So when I became a knife reviewer, I realized that I needed to start looking at knives that weren't, in the price range of $400 and up, because that's not what everybody's buying. A lot of people spend only up to $100 on a knife, and that's just fine because there's plenty of knives that will give you a great experience. This knife, this Raccoon, being one of those knives. So let's take a deeper look at the Vosteed Raccoon, into the specifications, the materials, and just what makes this knife cut. So let's compare the Raccoon to some other knives. Of course, we have the Spyderco Para 3, because by law, we are required to compare it to the Para 3 first. It's just the rules. I don't make up the rules. This is a knife review. You just compare it to a Para 3 no matter what. This is the Paramilitary 2, and it is sitting in between these two knives, but it is definitely closer to the Paramilitary 2 than it is the Para 3, which is a change as far as these budget knives go. Normally the budget knives are much closer to the Para 3. This one, I believe, is a little bit closer to the Paramilitary 2, being that it is the biggest out of all the budget knives that I'm reviewing. That being said, we can put it next to some of the other budget knives that I'm reviewing, and it might make a little more sense to how big it looks. So this is the Kaiser Drop Bear 2. And we have a much larger size. They have the same style blade, but we have a 1/4 inch larger blade on the Raccoon, and we have quite a bit larger of a handle. Just overall, bigger knife. If we're going to look at the brother knife to the raccoon, the porcupine, we have just a little bit bigger of a blade. The handle lengths are pretty close to the same. The blade lengths are just, we got a little bit more on the raccoon. We have a lot of belly on the porcupine, and the cutting edge might be pretty close to each other, but this is going to edge it out just a little bit. So if you have big hands, if you like a bigger knife to carry, that might be something that influences you to go along with the raccoon. All right, so let's get into the overall specifications, actual sizes, and materials that make up the raccoon. So the raccoon is going to be 7.6 inches overall length. And that's a fairly substantial overall length for one of these budget knives. Most of them are coming closer to the 7-inch range. And I like that this is an option that comes in just a little bit bigger. For some of us that like a little bit more knife, we have an option to have a little bit more knife right here. We have a 3¼ inch blade and a 4.36 inch handle, which is going to be a little bit handle heavy on the blade to handle ratio, but what that's going to let us do is choke up on the blade and really get a good control over a larger size blade than a lot of these other knives have. So in order to control that extra length of blade, we have an extra length of handle to get our hands gripped up further on the blade. I really like how this knife, we can choke up either into this choil or we can hold back into this finger cutout. Options are good. How we all like to hold the knife a little bit different. So being able to do different styles allows for just different feels for different people. Different strokes for different folks is a good thing. We have a 1.1 inch handle thickness and a 1.07 inch blade thickness. That's basically the same on both sides. It's very even feeling, and that allows for a very traditional pocket knife feel to this knife. The knife is fairly thin. We have a 0.47 inch, I believe, handle thickness, and we have a 0.118 blade thickness. So this drop point blade stays very thin from the top all the way down to the edge. It's a flat ground blade, so that's going to allow it to stay nice and slicey. It's not going to get too thick up here to where it's going to slow down any of the cuts that you make as the knife blade passes through the material. Overall, I find this to be a very traditional feeling knife. It's put together well. I think that it's easy to adapt to this knife. I pick it up and it doesn't feel like anything strange with it. It doesn't feel like anything is crazy remarkable with it, but it is very easy to use. It's very easy to just pick up this knife and go, okay, I have a traditional pocket knife. It works. It's what I'm used to with other knives, and it's a good quality. So sometimes if it's not broke, don't fix it. So as far as breaking down the materials for this knife, let's start with the blade. And we have this copper dune color PVD that the blade is in. And not only is it, very corrosion resistant, it's a unique look to the knife. I like how these knife makers are starting to use colors other than just black for their PVD. They're not going wild and doing neon colors or, just everything that's just tactical. It seems like for the longest time, knives are either really wild and it was like a zombie killer and black and neon green, or it was just tactical this, tactical that, and all you saw was, coyote and desert colors or green, army colors. And while this is, a green color, I don't find this to be like an army green color. And the mix with this dune, they call it a copper dune color, is just tasty. I like it. It's pretty close to my Raiden R2's color that they did their blade in, and I'm starting to really like the copper blades. They seem to hold up a lot like the black blades do. I don't see them showing a lot of wear or any more than a black blade would, and it's just something different. I haven't seen a lot of it till recently, and Vosteed's one of those knife companies that really was on the forefront, I think, of bringing this color out to market. and they took a chance with it, and I think it really goes great. I really think that these copper blade knives look cool, and they're selling out, so other people are thinking they're looking cool too. The copper and green goes really well together. So what we have under this copper PVD is a 14C28N blade steel, as we can see right there. And 14C28N is probably my favorite of the blade steels in the $65, $70 price range. I think it's, a very durable steel. It's very corrosion resistant. It's not too far off from Nitro V, but I think it takes a better edge and holds a better edge for a longer time than Nitro V does. You're not going to have to sharpen your 14C28N up nearly as much as you are your Nitro V, although the Nitro V is a little bit more durable. If you were going to really hard use this knife and worry about it chipping, I'm not worried about it chipping. And 14C28N is a knife steel that's been out. It's been tested, it's been used, it works. It's not fancy, it's not a super steel, but as far as knife steels that go that aren't a super steel, it's one of the best. With 154 cm kind of being the one that's above it, before you get into super steels like S35VN, 14C28N is a great steel, and for the price, it's really hard to beat. It really is hard to beat, and I like it better than Nitro V. It just holds an edge, and it's just nice to keep a knife sharp. Having a knife that stays sharp is just a blessing. Having to sharpen your knife all the time is a pain, and I don't run into issues with my knives chipping as much as I run into issues with my knives getting dull. So I tend to err on the 14C28N steel versus a Nitro V steel. Now, as far as the rest of this knife goes, it's again pretty traditional. From the drop point blade to a micarta handle, we're not breaking any new ground here as far as pocket knives go. But we do have this nice inset liner that keeps this knife nice and compact. Our micarta isn't sitting on top of the liner. The liner's sitting literally inside the micarta. So not only do we not see the liner, we don't feel the thickness of it either. So that's a real selling point for this knife for me. It stays thin in the hand and it stays sturdy behind the micarta without, having to see the two layers. When you look at, say, the porcupine, we have a layer of micarta and we have a layer of liner. And this knife is going to be a lot thicker than this knife is. Now, they're both working with the same locking feature. This is Vosteed's top liner lock. And the top liner lock is the same thing as Spyderco's button activated compression lock. And basically what we have is a button that pushes down a liner lock, but the liner lock's in the back of the knife. And putting the liner lock back here instead of the liner lock up here allows for a much stronger lock on the knife. It's just the way it is. It's been proven over and over again. I'm not breaking any new ground by telling you this, but Vosteed is taking this locking mechanism that was at once patented by Spyderco. Now the patent's worn out, or it's aged out, I should say, and they're utilizing it on much less expensive knives, and I think it's great. I think this is a lock that should be utilized on any budget knife. Any knife that has a liner, we should be using a top liner lock, basically. It's the smartest way to use the liner. It's a very clean way to use the liner. It feels really good. Any action on the knife, it's going to be smooth with the top liner lock. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's no reason not to use it. I don't want to see a bunch of knives in the future coming out with regular liner locks. I don't want to see them coming out with button activated liner locks. I want it to be a top liner lock. So that's the one problem that we have with Drop Bear is, while it is a button activated liner lock, the liner is locking in the front instead of the back. And when it locks in the back, it's just a better locking system just by design. Now, we have stainless steel hardware throughout. There's not much of it to going around. We can swap our deep carry pocket clip from right to left-hand side. So left-handed people are taken care of. We have a nice little filler piece of the copper dune colored inset that we can move from this side to this side. When we do move our pocket clip, we have a little hole for a lanyard, and we have one little body screw along with the pivot collar and screw. So very simple design, very good looking design. There's not a whole lot to it, and there doesn't have to be. So let's get into the action of this knife and my final thoughts on it. So my final thoughts on the Vosteed Raccoon are that it has some really good action on it. It has the strongest detent out of all the budget blade knives that I have gone over and reviewed. We're going to have thumb studs for how we deploy the blade. We can both use our thumb, and we can, of course, reverse flick this knife just fine. Now, one of the things I really do like is the ergonomics on this knife, and the ergonomics of this knife go really to basically right here. Right here, I thought looked really uncomfortable when I bought this knife. I didn't think it was going to be a good feature of it, and it turned out to be my favorite feature of it. What this does basically is allows my middle finger to slide into this groove right here, and then my pointer finger goes on top of this kind of cutout, which is half of a blade choil and half of this kind of I don't know, I guess it's kind of a cutout as far as the handle goes, but it's almost like a pistol grip. And my index finger sits out from the rest of my hands, and I have this very thick point in the handle that I can grip with between my thumb and this part of the handle. The rest of the handle stays very thin in my hand, but I'm able to squeeze very well between my index finger and my thumb. As you see, the rest of my fingers wrap around the handle, and this finger is very far back because I have so much more handle that I'm squeezing into it. Now, with the jimping only being right here on the blade spine, I kind of need this because it's really the only place I can grip up here. The rest of it's very slippery, and I really wish that this knife had more jimping along the spine. That's my one kind of qualm with the Raccoon, is that I wish I had a little bit more grip from the jimping up here on the spine, because that's where my thumb tends to go. My thumb doesn't tend to stand back here. It kind of goes up here, and I wish that the feel of this jimping was up here. And for the price, I know that other knives, just like Porcupine, has jimping all the way up the blade and literally all over the body. And then we also have the Drop Bear, which has a lot of jimping on the blade and up towards the end of the drop point as well. So if Vosteed had done that and added jimping right here, I think this would be probably my pick for my favorite of the budget blades. However, that little bit right there just kind of bugs me, that there's nothing right here to grip my thumb into. Does it ruin the experience of the knife? No. Does my thumb slip off the knife? No. Would I rather there be some jimping right there? Yes, I would rather be jimping there. Now, it being the biggest knife out of the class of these budget banger knives, I think that it having the strongest detent makes sense. I prefer that this knife has the detent that it does. It is the heaviest out of the knives that are the budget bangers that I've reviewed so far. This is 3 ounces, which is not a heavy knife. But the other 2 knives are much lower, and they're the 2.4 ounce range. I think it was the lightest. So it's quite a bit heavier, almost half an ounce heavier than the lighter of the other 2 knives, which I can actually feel, but that translates to feeling like a solid knife. It's not a heavy knife. It just feels more solid, like I could use this, have a harder use purpose for this knife. I think this is the most traditional of the shapes that we have in the budget banger knives. And with the way this pistol grip fits in my hand, I just really love the overall feel ergonomically of this knife. It runs on bearings. It's smooth. All the budget bangers run on bearings. They're all very smooth, but I kind of like the pressure that has to be applied with this knife, because with the heavier detent, you kind of got to press hard and then it snaps out to this crack and you have a really nice auditory sound. If I'm going to pick a budget banger knife out of the three that I have reviewed, this one's close to the top with me. I don't know. I think the jury's still out between the three of them. I think there's reasons to pick all three of them, and I'll probably do a episode where I compare all three: Porcupine, Drop Bear 2, and Raccoon. They're all within $5 of each other, and I think they all serve a great purpose. They're all great for everyday carry. But as far as the heaviest uses out of them, or the heaviest user out of them, I think the Raccoon's going to be it. It's just a solid little knife. It fits really well in my hands. I have a bigger hand. I like a little bit bigger of a blade. This knife fits that category, and I'm enjoying using it so far. So far, so good. I like the Dune Copper PVD. I like the top liner lock. The inset liner is a really good touch for this knife. There's really nothing that I'm not into about this knife, other than the fact that I think it needs more jimping up here. And that's a very small knock on the knife. So that's it, you guys. This is the Vosteed Raccoon. I'm your host, Garrett. This is the Cutting Room Knife Review. And until next time, guys, stay sharp.